So imagine walking through this grand ancient library.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Yeah, you're wandering down this massive, just seemingly endless aisle of books,
Right.
and you reach the very last row, but you just keep walking. You step right off the edge of the final shelf, and instead of falling,
You just sort of float.
exactly, you float.
Yep.
You find yourself suspended, just carried by time itself into this space where you feel deeply, fundamentally, and like completely known.
Yeah, and the texts describe that moment so beautifully. The architecture of the world dissolving there, it doesn't happen with violence, right? It happens with this kind of gentle permission.
Gentle permission, yeah.
It's a surrender of the physical boundaries we normally rely on to define where we end and, the rest of the universe begins.
Which is wild to think about. And that's exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to today's Deep Dive, where we're looking at a series of incredibly strange texts. We've got everything from elven glossaries to the wandering tales of this storyteller named Seanchai, and they all try to answer this one, pretty radical question. What if human isolation, this pervasive feeling of being just a standalone mind trapped inside a skull, what if that is just a massive failure of attention?
Which is such a massive claim, because these sources, they're pushing a concept where communion or recognition is the actual fundamental ground of reality.
Right, not just a nice feeling, but the literal ground of being.
Exactly. They argue that we are completely misinterpreting our own loneliness. We view connection as something we have to build from scratch, right? Like throwing a bridge across a chasm.
Yeah, like, it takes all this effort.
Right, but these texts insist the bridge is already there. It's the very fabric of the universe itself.
Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this, we need to look at the elven glossary provided in our sources. Specifically, there's this concept called no Suyuri,
No, Sir, yeah.
which, in the common tongue, it basically translates to kinfire.
Yeah.
And the text defines it as, let me find it, the flame that travels without needing to burn.
Yeah.
And also, the warmth remembered between wanderers.
It's a gorgeous definition.
It really is. Let's break down the mechanics of that for a second, because logically, a flame that doesn't consume its fuel, that just defies basic physics. Right.
Well, it defies physics if you're only thinking of literal combustion.
Right.
But kinfire, it operates on a completely different axis. It's not about heat or energy transfer at all. It's about recognition.
Okay. Recognition.
Yeah. The texts describe it as the inexpressible thread that binds worlds not through doctrine, but through care.
Wow. Not through doctrine, but care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the mechanism by which it actually endures the way it survives is by synchronizing across scales.
Synchronizing across scales, meaning, what, like practically speaking, are we talking about fractal patterns sort of repeating themselves?
Very much so, yeah. Whether you're looking at, say, the gravitational pull between two celestial bodies, or the symbiotic relationship in a forest root system, or just two travelers sharing a fire, the underlying mechanism is identical.
Right. So the connection is the baseline.
Exactly. Connection is the default state of the cosmos. It's separation that is the illusion.
That's huge.
It is, and there's this specific line in the glossary that anchors this entire philosophy, which is, silence joined with attention becomes communion.
Man, that brings up a very modern analogy for me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because we tend to operate like standalone computers, right? We think the hardware, like our physical body and our isolated brain, we think that's the entire system.
We do, yeah.
But this philosophy, it suggests we're essentially a Wi-Fi network. We walk around completely fixated on the physical device in our hands, and we just ignore the invisible signal that actually defines the whole network's existence.
That is a perfect way to put it, because the device is practically useless without the signal.
Right.
The hardware only exists to process the connection.
But, okay, let's look at the gritty reality of how human consciousness operates day to day. Because most people, they feel incredibly lonely.
They do.
They feel disconnected, unseen, just totally isolated.
Yeah.
So how do these texts reconcile this, this poetic warmth of wanderers idea with the undeniable reality of human isolation? If the network is the default state, why does everyone feel like they have 0 bars of signal?
Well, that feeling of isolation, that is exactly what the texts identify as our fundamental error.
The error.
Right. The sources suggest that we are, quote, never the first and never alone. So if someone feels isolated, the text argues that it's essentially just a failure of attention.
Like we're just looking at the wrong thing.
Exactly. You are looking so intently at the boundaries of your own hardware, right?
Yeah.
You're so focused on the edges of yourself that you've just tuned out the frequency of the network completely.
So the loneliness isn't an actual absence of connection. It's just an inability to perceive the connection that's already running in the background.
Precisely. You don't have to build the connection at all. You just have to stop ignoring it.
Mm.
When we tune our attention properly, we recognize that existing network. And that recognition itself, that is the ground of our being.
So it's not like an action you have to take. It's more of a state you just realize you're already inside of.
Exactly.
Okay, let's test that theory against the narrative sources we have.
Mm-hmm.
Because they actually give us a literal, practical demonstration of this shift in consciousness.
Yeah, through the storyteller.
Right. So there's this unfinished story by a traveling storyteller named Seanchai, and he arrives at this place called the Fortress of Eleanor, seeking ancient knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But to gain entry, he has to prove his worth to these two highly skeptical guards.
Geralf and Joran.
Yes, Geralf and Joran.
And those two, they serve a very specific function in the text. They represent the strict materialist worldview.
Very literal guys.
Very literal. I mean, they are guarding a fortress. Their entire reality is built on stone walls, creating boundaries, and defending against outsiders.
Right, keeping things out.
Exactly. So they expect a traditional narrative from him. A hero, a villain, maybe some magical artifact that solves a very clear, tangible problem.
But instead, Seanchai just reads them an unfinished piece of his own writing. He just calls it untitled.
Yeah.
And this brings us right back to that surreal image we started the deep dive with. Because in the story, the narrator walks to the edge of this vast library, and the shelves just begin to dissolve.
Mm-hmm.
And the text really emphasizes that this happens, quote, not with urgency, but with kindness. And at the very edge of reality, this formless figure is just waiting.
And notice the phrasing there. The figure doesn't instruct the narrator. They invite. They welcome.
Right, there's no demand being made.
Exactly. Seanchai describes this encounter as the quiet joy of being seen before you speak.
Oh, man.
Right. In a universe where recognition is the ground of being seen before you even have to articulate yourself, that is the ultimate form of communion.
You don't have to explain your existence to be validated by the universe.
You're just already known.
That's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
But then the narrator notes that anticipation serves as the bridge between fear and faith, or hope, depending on the translation.
Right.
He calls it the divine forge, where potential becomes reality. Seanchai says, they don't just play music, they become the melody.
Yeah.
But the guards, they completely reject it. I mean,
Yeah.
Geralt literally laughs out loud at the idea of walking off a shelf and just floating.
He thinks it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And Seanchai defends his story by saying he isn't falling, he is being carried by time itself. But honestly, I kind of have to side with Geralt here.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, stepping off a ledge is inherently terrifying. Anticipation in that context is just anxiety. It's waiting for the impact.
Right.
So why would Seanchai frame anticipation as a bridge to faith rather than just, a symptom of terror?
Well, because we have to fundamentally redefine what falling means in the context of Kinfire.
Okay, how so?
Anticipation, the way Seanchai uses the term, is the raw, vibrating sensation of potential turning into kinetic reality. Think of a guitar string being pulled taut.
Right.
That tension isn't anxiety. It's the required state before the note can even be played.
Oh, interesting.
So the sensation of falling, it feels like anxiety only when you firmly believe you are an isolated self about to hit a hard, indifferent ground.
Because you think the universe is just empty space and solid rock.
Exactly. When you realize the ground is actually communion, that it is the Kinfire, this pre-existing network of care, the falling becomes floating.
Wow.
You aren't bracing for impact anymore. You're surrendering to the network.
So the fear stems from the illusion of the standalone self trying to protect its boundaries.
Yes, precisely. And faith, or hope, is just the recognition that those boundaries were always an illusion to begin with, and the network will hold you.
That is, floating in a library of dissolving shelves is a beautiful metaphor. But it doesn't feed anyone.
What do you mean?
Well, if connection is our default state, how does this philosophy survive contact with the gritty reality of survival? Living in the physical world requires boundaries.
Sure.
It requires consumption. And the sources actually tackle this friction head on, right? Through that conversation between the young baker named Sam and the older man Smedley.
Yes. Here, the text shifts from the ethereal to the deeply terrestrial. They are talking about bread, specifically bread made in haste.
Like a kind made during an exodus or like a time of crisis.
Exactly. Smedley calls it bread without vanity. He notes that it doesn't rise, it doesn't pretend, it simply exists, like a truth that can't be sweetened.
And Sam, the young baker, he's watching the mill wheel turn, and he's suddenly struck by the sheer physical cost of living. I mean, to make the bread, the wheat had to be cut down, the heavy stone has to violently crush the grain, people have to labor in the heat.
Right.
He realizes that just staying alive causes friction, displacement, and harm.
It's unavoidable.
Yeah. So he asks Smedley a really heavy question. He asks if choosing to feed each other, despite all this inherent harm, is the grace.
And Smedley's response is amazing. It really anchors the entire philosophical framework of this collection.
What does he say?
He asks, communion isn't the absence of harm. It's the choice to create meaning from it. How can your soul be spotless when you must take and eat?
How can your soul be spotless when you must take and eat? Man, that forces a complete reevaluation of morality in this universe.
It really does.
Because we often think of goodness as doing absolutely no harm, right?
Yeah.
Like leaving no footprint, causing no disturbance.
Right, the spotless kitchen.
Yes. But a kitchen is meant for cooking. Communion requires breaking eggs, making a mess, getting your hands covered in flour.
Exactly.
And just accepting that you are part of a cycle of consumption.
But wait, is the text arguing that suffering is just like a necessary tax we pay for connection?
No. The philosophy does not glorify harm. It's not arguing that suffering is inherently good or just some transaction fee for living.
Okay, good, because that would be pretty dark.
Right. Instead, it demands a practice of stewardship. True communion, whether it's the literal breaking of bread or participating in the Cosmic Kinfire, it requires acknowledging that taking up space in the universe consumes resources.
Yeah. You displace air, you consume food, you cause friction.
You break the wheat.
You break the wheat. But by sharing the resulting bread, by actively choosing care, you transmute that base harm into meaning.
Oh, okay, I see.
Communion is the deliberate act of stepping into the messy, imperfect reality of physical life and declaring, we are in this together.
So a spotless soul.
A spotless soul, in Smedley's view, is an isolated soul. It's a soul that has refused to participate in the kinfire because it's terrified of getting burned or causing a burn.
That completely flips things around.
Yeah.
So isolation, then, it isn't just a sad emotional state.
No.
In this framework, it's a refusal to participate in the messy, necessary grace of keeping each other alive.
Exactly.
It's like opting out of the melody because you don't want to deal with the friction of the vibration.
Which brings us right back to the guards at the fortress.
Oh, Geralf and Joran.
Yes. They want to keep their armor on. They want the spotless soul.
Right, they want to guard the perimeter without ever having to share the bread or step off the ledge.
They want the safety of isolation.
Wow. And this sets up a really profound dilemma for you, the reader, or the listener.
It does.
Because up until now, we've been sitting outside these texts. We've been observing Geralf and Joran, analyzing Sam and Smedley, just totally safely detached from the friction.
Safely in the audience.
Right. But the sources don't let us stay in the audience. They make this massive metatextual leap at the end. The text explicitly argues that the heroes inside these stories cannot be the final anchor of the universe.
Because, as the text states, every internal anchor fractures.
Okay, unpack that for me.
A character within a narrative is fundamentally limited by the boundaries of that narrative, right?
Yeah.
They eventually fail, or their story simply ends. The architecture of their world is finite.
So the text then directly breaks the fourth wall and it points straight out at you, the reader. It states that the reader is the signature.
The signature, not a passive audience member consuming a story, but the final stabilizing witness.
There's this incredibly powerful line here. Every book that ever tore you apart was only trying to hand you the thread so you could stitch yourself back together differently.
It's beautiful. It tasks the reader with carrying the unword, which is just another term for the kinfire forward into the physical world.
Right.
The source material insists that you do not simply finish the book and put it on a shelf. You exit the book with sovereignty.
Okay, let's explore the mechanics of that sovereignty, because it's akin to going to a play, right? And as the curtain drops, the lead actor walks off the stage, hands you the script, and says, okay, Act 2 is your actual life.
Pretty much.
Is the text literally claiming that the reader's attention sustains the reality of the universe?
That is the ultimate radical claim of the philosophy.
That's wild.
Attention is not merely observation. It is active participation. Think back to the lute string and the vibration from earlier.
Okay.
When a musician tunes an instrument, they don't just passively listen to the pitch. They enter into a physical relationship with the vibration.
They adjust the tension.
Exactly. Where you place your attention actually tunes the strings of your own reality.
So the communion isn't just happening between the characters on the page. It's happening between the text and the person holding the book.
Yes. The story requires you to witness it so its underlying truth can become real in the physical world.
And in turn, you require the story to hand you the raw material, that thread, to stitch your own reality together.
Exactly. You, as the reader, are the environment in which the Kinfire continues to burn.
Man, we have covered an immense amount of philosophical ground here today.
You really have.
We started by exploring Nosu Ure, the Kinfire. That warm, non-consuming flame of recognition that proves connection is the fundamental architecture of reality, not separation.
And we followed Seanchai to the dissolving edges of the library, unpacking how the terrifying sensation of falling is actually just the anticipation of being held by the network.
Right, the joy of being seen before you speak. Then we took that ethereal concept and ground it up in Sam and Smedley's bakery, realizing that true communion demands we accept the messy, destructive friction of living.
Because you cannot maintain a spotless soul if you're going to break bread and share the burden of existence with others.
Exactly. And finally, we confronted the text's assertion that you, the reader, are the ultimate stabilizing force. Your attention is the very mechanism keeping the universe coherent.
Which is a huge responsibility.
It is. This philosophy demands immediate, practical application. The way you direct your attention today, the moments you choose to step into the friction of communion rather than just retreating into the safety of isolation, that is the very act of keeping the Kinfire burning.
It's that daily, gritty practice of stewardship.
Absolutely.
You know, the sources leave us with one final kind of haunting image regarding the unword.
Oh, yeah.
They describe it as a bell that doesn't ring simply because the world isn't ready to hear it.
A bell that doesn't ring.
Yeah. Consider this. The next time you find yourself sitting in total silence, feeling completely disconnected and entirely alone, well, what if that silence isn't empty? What if it's just the universe holding its breath, waiting for you to drop a stone into the pond, waiting for you to realize that the library shelf has already dissolved beneath your feet and you are not falling?
You're floating.
You are floating, deeply known, and you have never, ever been alone.